A sitting FBI director? Pleading the Fifth? Then accused of lying to Congress twice? Senator Sheldon Whitehouse just called out Kash Patel in a way that could shake Washington. This isn't drama. It's a direct challenge to the truth itself.
Thanks, Chairman. My comments today about FBI chiefs testifying honestly and not lying to Congress are particularly relevant in light of your opening statement. Let me start with the basic fact behind all of this, that the current FBI director pled the Fifth in the matter where he ended up providing grand jury testimony. We've never had an FBI director come through this committee who had pled the Fifth before. As you know, when you plead the Fifth, to do it honestly, you have to have a good faith belief that your testimony would subject you to criminal liability, which meant if Patel was being honest, he had a good faith belief that his testimony would subject him to criminal liability. As that went forward, he ended up getting immunity from the government in order to testify. If this were a court, a civil court, a judge would allow an adverse inference to be drawn against the witness who had asserted the Fifth. In Patel's proceedings, we were never even allowed to get to the bottom of the grand jury testimony. Why he pled the Fifth, what he said, all of that was papered over as he went through this committee to confirmation. So for obvious reasons, I pursued that question, just as you would, Chairman, if the shoe were on the other foot. And I believe that Patel lied to us in the committee. He said that he couldn't share his grand jury testimony, and I'm quoting him here, because there's a court order on that case, he said. He said again, I can't go into court orders granted by the DC District Chief Judge. And then when I pressed him further, he challenged me saying, you want me to violate a court order? He then went on to say to Senator Booker that his grand jury testimony has been sealed by the Department of Justice, and I'm not allowed to discuss it here. Well, as it turns out, none of that was true. All of that was false. And we know that because the DC District Chief Judge, who he mentioned in his false statement to this committee, said, and I'm quoting the judge, July 2025, Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 6E allows witnesses like Patel to divulge the contents of their testimony, meaning that nothing was preventing him from doing so before the committee, unquote. So it sure looks like he lied about that. So in his recent testimony, I asked him again. And now he offered the committee a new and different lie, which is that he had released the transcript already. He said, first of all, I'd love my grand jury testimony to be released. I want it made public. And then he said, I wanted the transcript released, and I will get it to you, sir, to me. I wanted the transcript released, and I will get you the transcript. He said to me, we can confirm that pursuant to my action, that grand jury testimony has been released, the transcript. He said the transcript has been released publicly. He told Senator Booker, well, I don't have the grand jury transcript. That's why I released it. So, as it turns out, no transcript was released. He was making up that lie, probably to get away from having to answer our questions. But now we have an FBI director who first lied in committee about a non-existent court order and had that lie exploded by the actual judge who he claimed had him under court order, and then lied in committee about having released a transcript that we all know has not been released. I think on that state of facts, we're entitled to get the transcript that he says he wants us to have, that he says he released publicly, and that the judge has confirmed is not under any court order of protection. So, Mr. Chairman, I look forward to working with you. I know you have a strong interest in FBI chiefs testifying honestly in this committee and not lying to Congress to try to get to the bottom of what is going on, because those seem like two pretty flagrant and obviously provable lies. And we'll follow up for further assistance to get to the bottom of this. But I don't think it's asking too much to ask the committee's support, to ask Director Patel to do what he says he has already done, which is to release the grand jury transcript of his testimony and provide it to us. Thank you.
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse's rebuke of FBI Director Kash Patel was more than a moment of Senate theater. It was a live demonstration of why congressional oversight matters and what happens when the facts get murky at the highest levels of law enforcement. Whitehouse laid out a tight, prosecutable argument. Patel told the committee he couldn't disclose his grand jury testimony because of a court order, then later told senators he had already released the transcript. And both claims appear to be contradicted by the public record. That's why Whitehouse pushed so hard for the transcript Patel said was already public. Because if those statements don't line up, the committee and the public deserve to know why. Rev 1. Some of the factual spine behind Whitehouse's charge is already documented. Patel previously invoked the Fifth Amendment in earlier proceedings and was later granted limited immunity so he could testify before a grand jury. A procedural history that explains why his grand jury testimony is central to scrutiny of his credibility. Those immunity and grand jury appearances are a matter of record. AP News +1. Whitehouse also pointed to the legal landscape that undermines Patel's claims of inability to speak. A federal judge's orders and related court filings in the Patel-related matters make clear that Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 6(e) does not categorically bar a witness from discussing their own grand jury testimony. Courts have said witnesses like Patel can, under the rule, divulge their own testimony. That undercuts the explanation Patel gave the committee when he said a court order prevented him from answering. If a witness claims a court restriction that doesn't exist, the logical question is, why make that claim before Congress? Court Listener +1. What makes this legally consequential is the sequence Whitehouse emphasized. Invoking the Fifth suggests a genuine fear of criminal exposure at the time. Later receiving immunity to testify means prosecutors found Patel's testimony useful. And yet, Patel's public statements to the committee about what he could or couldn't share and whether he'd already released a transcript don't match what the judge and the record show. The mismatch isn't only embarrassing, it cuts at the heart of congressional oversight. When a witness claims protection but the record shows they were free to speak, the committee has every right to press for the underlying documents and to ask whether statements given to senators were truthful. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. Beyond the legal technicalities, there's a civic dimension to what Whitehouse is saying. The Senate Judiciary Committee's job isn't to score partisan points, it's to preserve institutional integrity. When a confirmation process elevates someone to lead the FBI, that person's sworn statements to Congress are a primary mechanism for public accountability. If those statements are shown to be false, the consequences are not merely reputational, they weaken the very trust that lets the FBI operate with legitimacy. Citizens expect the Bureau's director to answer honestly about matters that touch national security, grand juries, and the rule of law. When uncertainty replaces candor, the result is distrust. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. So what should viewers take away from this exchange? First, the legal history matters. Pleading the Fifth, receiving immunity, and then later claiming a transcript was released are all discrete, verifiable events that a committee can and should check. Second, this isn't just inside baseball legalism. It's about whether the people who run justice institutions are willing to be transparent and accountable. And third, the committee's demand for the transcript is not a fishing expedition. It's a necessary step to reconcile conflicting public statements and restore clarity for the American people. If you care about the health of our institutions, don't treat this as a political spectacle. Watch the clip, share it with someone who cares about oversight, and press your representatives to insist on the facts being produced in public. Truth is the baseline for accountability, and in moments like this, demanding the record is how democracy protects itself. Subscribe to Left Lens for the follow-up. We'll track whether the transcript gets released, what it says, and what it means for trust in our institutions.